Hello from North Carolina on a very pretty early September day. It's only 72 degrees outside, so I decided to introduce the second part of my video right out here. Isn't that pretty? Fall flowers. So nice. I already told you the first leg of our trip, which was Paris, and we really enjoyed it, though we got rained on the entire time, which made walking the whole time much more significantly difficult because there was nowhere to sit that wasn't soaked. So nowhere to rest. You just had to keep going. I was also out of shape a lot more 10 years ago. I've really been working hard to get back in shape and reduce inflammation. So when we do move to France, which will be coming up sooner than retirement, I'll be able to walk a lot more and a lot further without pain. So I've been working on my health, reducing inflammation and exercising and building muscle. The purpose of this video will be to show you our second leg of the trip. This was in 2016, almost 10 years ago, 9 years ago now. And it was just absolutely eye-opening. No matter where we went, we were constantly saying, wow, I could live here. And it wasn't just the beauty of the place, it was the people. People were welcoming and friendly and wonderful as long as you remembered you were in a different culture. This isn't America when you're in France. I mean, this where I am right now is. But in France, when you walk into anywhere, doesn't matter where, say bonjour. And say au revoir when you leave. Be polite. Learn the polite words. On this trip, we took the train, even though we were in a train strike. A very nice lady at this train station that we were supposed to leave from helped find us tickets on the TGV, even though there was a strike. And we were able to get to the next stop on our list, which was Annecy. I'm pretty sure that's how they pronounce it. Annecy, Annecy. So I'm pretty sure that's how our Airbnb hostess said it was called, and she lived there, so she ought to know. But it's been a long time, so never know. But let's get started looking at this trip. And this was the one that made us really decide we wanted to retire there. As you know, if you've watched my previous videos, recent events have made us decide that we don't want to wait till retirement, that we're going to take ourselves there now in our 50s. Let's get to it. I'll go back to the house for the rest of this.
Hello. I'm not sure if my new mic is working properly or not, but we're going to give it a go. If I sound like I'm in a box, it's probably not the new mic. It's probably not working properly. I probably did something wrong, and it's still my phone. But we'll find out. First, I'm going to move you so you're not looking into a dark doorway. I would shut that door, but my cat happens to be in there, and I don't want my cat to be... I don't want to disturb him, because otherwise he might disturb me. Welcome back to France, or my trip to France. And tonight we're going to talk about the most Disney-esque place I've ever been in my whole life. And I don't mean that in a cartoonish way. I mean that Annecy, France is one of the most beautiful places I have ever been in my entire life. This was the place that made us decide we're going to live there one day. So tonight, I'm late doing this because I got a new mic and I was waiting for Amazon to deliver it. I don't like to use Amazon very much, but sometimes you don't have a choice because there's nothing nearby except big box stores to order from. So I have my glass of wine, since it's evening, and it says I put a spell on you and has the Hocus Pocus wigs on it. My husband got this for me for our anniversary one year because we got married on Halloween 10 years ago, 10 and a half years ago, almost 11 years ago, in 2014. But I thought since it's later in the evening, I'll have my glass of wine and talk to you about Annecy while I show you some clips and videos of the place. It was absolutely beautiful. I'm looking at the wrong side of my camera. So I'm going to start over and go back over here. No, I'm not. I'm just going to wing it. It's late. I need to stop being a perfectionist and I need to start just getting it done. I ordered a new mic. I'm not sure if it's working, but we'll find out. And if it's not working properly, I will figure out what I'm doing wrong. And if I sound like I'm in a box, let me know, because that's not what I want. I got a new mic so I wouldn't sound like I was in a box. When we left Paris, we got on the TGV, and it was during a train strike. The lady at, I believe it was Gare du Nord train station, we took the metro there, and then even though there was a train strike, she really helped us out, and we spent an hour there while she looked and looked and looked for a way to get us on a train to Annecy. So we had a very nice train ride, breakfast brunchy things. So I think we each had like a croissant or something. And then we just sat and enjoyed the trip and enjoyed the scenery. So I'll show you a couple little video clips of the scenery on the train as we went by. And when we got there, it was a pretty quick trip since it was the TGV. It was probably a little over 2 hours. I'm looking at the wrong side of the camera again. So we got off the train, we walked up a slight incline, pulling our carry-on bags and with our backpacks on. And our Airbnb hostess, Marie, met us just across the street from the train station and walked us up. And what was funny was, I wasn't expecting this at all, she just came up and hugged us both. And we were both very surprised, because in France, most of them do what they call la bise, which is the air kisses on either side of the face. Some places in France have more than two, so just depends on where you are. Most French people feel that hugging is a little too intimate because you're putting your arms around someone. She told us that she had lived for several years in Berkeley, California. And so that alone was really fun. I liked that. It was really cool. She had just gotten used to American customs when she lived in Berkeley, and she said she really enjoyed the concept of hugging. So who were we to judge? That was a really great beginning. She showed us up into the tiny little elevator that the three of us and our 2 carry-on bags barely fit in. I mean, it was tight. It was a normal French lift, and we were on what they call the 3rd floor, which I think was the 4th floor there. Or we were the 2nd floor. I don't know. But we were high. It was nice. And I forgot to take photos of our little studio apartment, but I did take a photo off the terrace looking down into, it was like a town meeting place, a square. There was a building in the middle that you could go in and see postings for rentals or other things in there. And it was just a really nice square, and Lake Annecy was off to the side. But in the evening, there was a little fountain down below our terrace in that square that turned all sorts of little rainbow colors. So I'll pop a picture up here for you of that. So that was beautiful. It was a very nice little well-appointed studio apartment, and I really enjoyed the bathtub there because it wasn't big. It was like a square. You couldn't stretch your legs out in it, but it was so deep that you could fill it up to your shoulders and be submerged in the water, which I thought was fun. I had a bath while I was there. Okay, so after we got settled in, we were hungry and it was lunchtime, and Marie's apartment was right next to ours, and she had told us to just let her know when we were settled in, and she would give us some advice on where to start. So we knocked on her door, and she was very pleasant and said that she always recommended the restaurant that was right down and to the right of that fountain that I showed you a picture of. And I'm looking at the wrong side of the screen again. Over here, camera's over here. You guys, you're gonna laugh at me. By the way, shout out to Christine, who is someone who has commented on one of my posts and was born and raised and still lives in Annecy. So feel free, Christine, if you watch this, to please correct me on any names that I get wrong or mispronounce, and I will be forever grateful for that. And feel free to tell us anything you know about the things that we saw or the things that we did. We didn't get to do very much. We were only there for 2 days, basically 2.5 days, 2 nights and a half a day on either end of one full day. And we had walked so much in Paris in the rain with nowhere to sit and rest that I had a problem. My plantar fasciitis, I don't know. My planters came back, and that is when the tendon on the bottom of your foot tightens so badly that it's painful to walk, it's painful to step. And so I was not mobile enough to climb mountains. So we stayed in the lower parts of the town. So we didn't get to go up and see the beautiful chateaus and stuff, but we did get to see them just from below. Marie recommended a restaurant that was just down and out in the square. It was called Le Regan, R-E-G-A-N-N. This is where I had my second and favorite steak au poivre. My husband ordered what he said was a really nice pasta dish that had a balsamic reduction drizzled on the side. I'll show you pictures of those too. The serving staff were friendly and the food was delicious. And what I loved about the place is we sat outside because it was nice, finally. It wasn't raining. We were outside, and the front of their restaurant opens up. It's just glass, and it just opens up. I don't know if it opened up like a garage or if it opened sideways. I don't remember. But it was so nice that they were able to open up the entire place to be kind of an indoor-outdoor. But we were outside and enjoyed every second. Our server was really nice and kind. I ordered a carafe of wine. Now here in the United States, a carafe is usually a very small container that holds about 2 glasses, 5 ounces pour of wine. So anywhere from 8 to 10 ounces of wine, which is 2 full glasses of wine. When the carafe came, because I thought I'd have a 2-glass lunch since we were there and it was the first day. When I got the carafe, I realized, oh my Lord, that thing is huge. I think it was at least 3/4 of a bottle of wine size. I'll show you I showed you the picture of my steak and it had that in there. It was humongous. If you don't know, my husband does not drink wine. And so that was all for me. Now, I did not finish it. So just in case you were wondering, I did not finish it and stagger my way around Annecy the rest of the day. I had 2 glasses and I sadly and unfortunately had to leave the rest behind. After lunch, we wandered around the old part of the town and along Lake Annecy just to take in the sights. It was beautiful. The water was turquoise and it was just so calm and gorgeous. And you could look out at all the mountains surrounding this lake, and it was paradise. It was just paradise. Annecy is sometimes called the Venice of the Alps. It has canals running through the town, and a lot of the homes and the restaurants and the businesses line those canals, and there are bridges that go across. It's just the most quaint little place. Excuse me. I didn't realize this top was so revealy. Or so slippy, actually. It's just slipping. It's not revealing anything. If you're offended by a bra strap, I'm sorry. So we didn't go a lot of places. We did take a bus from right outside in front of our Airbnb because we decided, we'd found a bus in Paris that took us around. We might as well check out the bus in Annecy. Looking at the wrong side again. It was interesting to see the changes as you drove from the old town into the modern part of Annecy and see, there was a big mall and there were some other slicker, more office looking buildings, and not old world at all, but modern. Not dirty or bad, not unnice, just modern. A lot of times Americans seem to think that Paris must be just all charm everywhere all the time and have no modernity and have no high tech, and that's just not true. There are also gritty sides of places where you'll find similar poverty and similar drug addiction and other things that we find in this country too. And unfortunately, it's just something that seems to happen everywhere. The French are also dealing with suburban sprawl. Back to the fun. We were on the bus, and my husband and I noticed this wooden duck sitting on like the tire well on the inside of the bus on the seats. And it had a little hat on, and it had a scarf or a coat on. I can't really remember. We cannot remember the details. And for some reason, we didn't get a picture. What's wrong with us? It was the funniest thing. And at that point, were alone on the bus. We had ridden with the bus driver to the end of the line, and he was getting ready to turn around and come back, looping back to town to drop us back off again. We were getting ready to get off the bus in front of our Airbnb, and he turned around and looked, and he said in his perfect English, but with that French accent, "Is this your duck?" That sounded more Russian than French. My husband said, "No, this is not our duck. It was here when we got on the bus." And so I hope that the duck found its way home to its owner. Who knows? So on that first evening, we had eaten our large meal at lunchtime. Most French people do eat their larger meal at lunch and then have something lighter at dinner time. Not all, but most nights, most days, that's what they do. We decided to find a little grocery store and get some charcuterie and some wine for me to take back to our Airbnb so we could rest and just enjoy the evening. We saw a grocery painting on the side of this big store. Looked like a big grocery store. It wasn't a grocery sign per se, but it was like had like paintings of fruits and vegetables and stuff. Thought that's what it must be. And Google Maps was telling us there was a grocery right there. So we went in the door and looked around, and it was clothing. A bunch of clothing hanging on the racks. I might have a little video clip of that I can overlay up there. We were so confused. We were like, why are there fruits and vegetables painted on the side of the building, and why is Maps taking us here? And we looked around, and there was no employee in the place that we could see. And what we should have done was walk around the entire ground floor of this little department store and find somebody. But we did not. We thought Maps must have taken us to the wrong place. And we went out, spent another half an hour searching for a grocery store or market, a place that had charcuterie. And finally, the third time we walked into this building, there was a lady there. We found a lady. And I, said in my broken French, "Bonjour, madame." I don't even remember how I said it, but I asked her in broken French if she knew where we could find the produce, the groceries, or charcuterie. And she started to chuckle and said in her broken English, "Oh, that confuses a lot of people." And she pointed toward the back of this department store. It was not in plain sight. There was not a visible sign that you could have seen coming into that store. Unless you were a local, you were not going to know this. And at the back of the store, there was a stairway leading up to the grocery store, which was on the next floor up. So we went up and found our charcuterie, which, by the way, when you're looking at charcuterie, all different kinds of little thin sliced meats and salamis and all that wonderful stuff and cheeses and all of those things, it is so much cheaper there than it is here. We probably would have spent $60 on the little bit of charcuterie we got here in the United States. Well, we're there, it was like, we got out of there under 20 euro. And we got a lot because we got enough for the next couple of evenings and something for early in the morning. So it was really nice once we found it. But by this time, my feet hurt, and both of us really wanted to find a place to get a nice dessert to top off this little meal that we'd thrown together. And we had passed, in the 3 or 4 times we had walked around the block, we passed this little patisserie. And so I was like, let's go see if it's still open. So we went down there, and the lights were still on. And so I rushed toward it, knowing it was like 5 minutes till 7, and I'll bet they closed at 7. It was a patisserie. It wasn't like a late night store. And I made my kind of most embarrassing mistake in France when we were there. And I rushed in and said, "Are you still open?" And the girl behind the counter her eyes got big and she went, and there was one customer in there, a lady, and her eyes got big and she looked at me and went, and I stopped and thought, oh crap. So I again in my broken French said, I apologize. I'm an American. And I turned around and walked out the door, counted to 5, and very humbly walked back in and said, Bonjour, madame. And the girl behind the counter just laughed, and it was not a mocking laugh. It was, oh, ha, you do know the rules. And I'm relieved is the kind of the laugh she made. And the lady that was the customer in there laughed as well. And she said, oui, madame, we're still open. And so she was so kind, and we started to chit chat, and they were both actually very complimentary about the fact that as an American, I actually knew what I had done that was not within the cultural norms, and that seems very rude to them. And so they were both very nice and kind and complimentary that I had remembered and changed and gone back in. So she found me the prettiest, most unbroken little meringue for my dessert, and it's, you know, like a pavlova. It's crunchy meringue on the outside and nice and gooey and chewy in the middle. It was delicious. And my husband, I got him a little raspberry tart or something of that nature. I don't remember. I didn't eat it. But then we went back to our Airbnb and just really enjoyed the night. We went out on the terrace and looked out on the lake, and it was beautiful. It was cloudy, so there was no moon or anything, but there was still enough light coming through the clouds that it was just beautiful. And looking down at that little fountain, it just felt like we were in paradise. We had somehow, because we saw Rick Steves go there, we had somehow found the best place we could have ever found. The only thing I regret is that we only were there for a couple of days. We enjoyed the rest of our stay, and we regretted not taking the boat on the Seine, the tour boat that takes you by most of the things that are down at that level. We regretted not doing that tour when we were in Paris because it's covered, and we would have been able to see those sights without getting soaked and without injuring myself. So I was, you know, half limping for the rest of the trip. The next day, we spent the whole day just touring around, and we decided we wanted to take a boat tour of Lake Annecy. They had several stops. They stopped at this old famous big luxury hotel that was out on the lake, and it stopped at another dock further around and just went pretty much around this lake and showed the sights and talked about the chateaus that were tucked back in the hills and a big chateau that was on an island in the middle of the lake. I'm showing you pictures, I hope, as we go along on this video. And it was just absolutely gorgeous. So it was sprinkling on and off for the whole boat trip, but there was a cover, so we were able to get under it. There were probably only 10 people on this big boat. Most of the seats were empty because it was raining. We did not regret it for a bit. We were dressed warmly, so we were fine. And it was just beautiful. And there were a couple times that the sun almost came out and it wasn't raining. We still enjoyed the tour. We realized that as tourists, boats, if you've got a boat and you've got places that boat can go, that's a really good way to see stuff. The second night we were there, which is our final night, we decided to go out to dinner. We walked around. We'd had a light lunch that day and found this absolutely amazing looking restaurant. It was very old. It had rocks all around it. I do not remember the name. I do not know the little side alley street that we were down, but the place was packed. We got our 2 seats up next to a rock wall inside, and my husband got a raclette dish, but instead of like the normal raclette where you shove the cheese onto potatoes or whatever, it was like a bunch of rounds of vegetables and potatoes on a skewer with raclette cheese just melted all over it. And they pulled the skewer out. So he had that with a vegetable, and he said it was delicious. I took a bite. It was good. And I had a really nice piece of fish that had like a rice pilaf with it. And it was just a wonderful meal. And there were people talking loudly and cheersing each other in French, and little kids running around and being loud as well. And we were very happy to be up against the wall where we weren't getting tromped on by these little kids. But it was just a neat family atmosphere and environment, and the food was insanely good. I mean, it wasn't Michelin star. It was good though. It was comfort food good. The next day was our last day, and we found that there was no train leaving Annecy that day to go down into Italy, where we had planned to go next. So we had to find the time for a bus to take us to the very last town on the French side so that we could catch a train into Italy. We knew that it wasn't going to leave until later that afternoon, that the bus wasn't going to leave until then. So we decided to wander around some more, and that day was market day. So they had all the street market vendors and all, and our wonderful Airbnb hostess allowed us to leave our luggage up there inside her apartment. She had even invited us in for an hour of just nice conversation the day before. She wanted to know about what was going on in America. It was right before the 2016 presidential election, so I'm sure you know what she was asking about. So, yeah, there was that. But otherwise, it was a wonderful conversation. It was a good conversation anyway. She told us a little bit about some of the unrest that had been happening there as well, because nowhere is perfect, people. There's still going to be problems wherever you go. And as Rich Kagan, the guy I told you about on Substack, you need to find him, as he said the other day, whatever your traumas are, whatever your baggage is, you're taking that with you wherever you go. So be aware of how you respond to things. But we wandered through the marketplace, and it was so nice to be able to see a town market in effect. There were people selling vegetables and pastries and bread and everything you can imagine. There was even a stand that had all different flavors of nougat. 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 I don't know. Nougat, as how we Americans say it. So I had to get a couple pieces of that because that's just like the inside of a Snickers bar, only way better. So it was good. It had pistachio. We finally went back to the train station, only instead of a train, we got on a bus and went to a border town in France where we caught a train. Our trip to Annecy was the most memorable part of our trip in France. There are a couple more places we went when we came back out of Italy on the other side, and I'll tell you about those as well. And I also might tell you about the part where we were in Italy and talk about that too, because we were trying to decide for a while whether we wanted to retire in France or Italy. And as you know, having watched the Europats, shout out again, they had initially wanted to retire to Italy, but unfortunately, Italy has raised the cost of the amount of money you need to have in the bank before you're allowed to immigrate there. Plus, from what I understand, the bureaucracy in Italy is even slower than France is. And we all know how much fun it is dealing with bureaucracy. Ever been to a DMV that was crowded? That was our trip to Annecy, and that was literally the place that made us realize we want to retire there. Only now we've decided, as you know, that we're not waiting for retirement before my birthday, which is the end of next May. So that's our plan. And I hope you hit the like button and the subscribe button, and that you come with us on this journey as we declutter, dream, and depart, because we're moving to France. Please comment below if you have any fun stories about your travels and any faux pas that you might have made, or tell us about the most beautiful and neato place that you've ever traveled to. We'll see you later. Bye.